Hey everybody, I have a question from Melissa that's probably something that you might have. So I'm going to share this with the class, with Melissa's approval, of course. But the question is about foreign investment from a multinational company in another company or another country. So let me break this down for you guys. So this is foreign direct investment, or an FDI. So a parent company, let's say Parkco, wants to do business in Japan. And the easiest way to do that is to form a subsidiary here in the foreign country that will enable me to buy land, if it's allowable in that foreign country, hire people, pay taxes in that foreign country. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do this, but a subsidiary basically is a smaller version of my company that is doing business in the foreign country's own currency and pays taxes and everything else. So the subsidiary of Parco is in Tokyo, and we sell barbecue. Yeah, that's it. And the the subsidiary has paid all the taxes and incorporated in the Japanese government, so they are a company, a subsidiary, so they paid all the taxes, and they do all their exchanges in yen, which is the Japanese monetary unit, and then when they send profits back over to the U.S. to the parent company, they can play the market, if you will, and do it when the yen is higher than the dollar or lower than the dollar, depending on how you want to do it, where you get more dollars for the yen that is coming from Japan. So there's a lot of ways you can play the market when you have a subsidiary and you're turning the dollars or yen back into dollars. There's a bunch of different ways you can play that, and it usually smart CPA types make that worth more money by playing the currency market. So that's the subsidiary, and here it says the subsidiary operates like a domestic firm, like I am in the US. They produce pricing and other business functions under the control of the subsidiary's management, which means that the people in Japan would take care of pricing and everything else, because labor, cost of doing business is going to be wildly different in a foreign country. Japan's a pretty expensive place to live, so everything's going to be ratcheted up, and as much profit as you can extract from selling barbecue in Japan, which I think would be kind of a lot. I actually met an entrepreneur that had a barbecue restaurant, kind of really high end, and was doing quite well there in outside of Tokyo. Anyway, and the subsidiary also must observe the legal requirements of both the country where the parent firm is located. So they must abide by all of the legal U.S. dictates, as in labor practices, hiring and firing, but they also must abide by the foreign dictates of the host country. So Japan has really lax labor laws, as far as you can't sue your employer for sexual harassment very easily, where you could in the US. So it becomes really nebulous when you're hiring a Japanese national, do they fall under the same laws because the company's got to follow the same laws as the US? Well, the dividing line on that is that usually the host country's laws are paramount. So they drive a lot of the decisions for that subsidiary. But the accounting practices and fiduciary responsibilities are really what the U.S. government looks at, and they rarely get involved with enforcing labor laws or something like that in a host country subsidiary. And so basically, here's what you need to think of a subsidiary as. They're a small version of the company that the host is, and they represent the company in a foreign land. Everything is done by the foreign management independently, but they have supervision from the original country. So to me, being the U.S. And I tell them what to do, but they still have some autonomy on how to do it. Now, I could of course fire all those people if I'm allowed to do that by the host country, different labor laws, and put in new people. But again, hopefully I've done my due diligence and hired the right people when I did all of my hiring the first time. But don't ever think that actually works the way you want it to. So hopefully that makes sense as far as subsidiaries, how they do the transactions. Just think of them as mini-me's when it comes to companies, but the real delta is they've got to follow most of the tax laws in the U.S. and how you do business in the U.S., but they also have to follow, and this probably supersedes the U.S. laws, how they do business in a foreign country. So running a subsidiary is extremely chaotic depending on the country that subsidiary is in. And that's the reason why war-torn countries are countries that have really lax laws or terrible dictatorships or things like that. There's not a lot of people that want to invest in those countries because they're not stable. America's stability and that of our allies really helps the businesses see that if they have a stable government, then we can be fairly assured that our investment won't be taken over by the government. A great example would be back in the 50s, before Castro took over Cuba. There was a lot of investment by the U.S. in Cuba. And there were a lot of multinational corporations there. But when Castro came into power and took all of those companies and nationalized them, as in socialism, and we'll talk more about that. Well, that's another class. That's what killed the investment in Cuba. And that's the reason why they leaned toward communism and Russia for help for 50 or 60 years. But that's probably more than you wanted to know. Okay, a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I think you've got the idea about FDI is basically me buying mini-me or placing mini-me in a foreign country, but I'm still kind of dictated by two laws: the law of the land of wherever I'm at and my home country, so the U.S. laws. And again, the U.S. is only going to enforce things that have a direct impact on them. Maybe some labor laws if you're a huge multinational like Nike. The U.S. has pushed back on some of their labor practices in third world countries, and that's a whole other conversation whether that's good or bad. But to me, if I was in a third world country, I'd rather have a job for 10 cents a day than no job at all, which really, when it comes right down to it, is the reason why I believe foreign investment is good in third world countries, because I'd rather have a job than no job at all. And that's what it really boils down to in a lot of those places. But again, there's bigger issues there. Um, uh, but really, what the U.S. government's worried about is taxes. So uh, they'll be looking at the transactions between the multi or the direct investment, smaller subsidiary, and the mothership. That's what they'll be looking at. But then the subsidiaries got to understand the local laws and labor laws and taxes and everything else. And so they've got two masters to worry about. Okay, again, more than you probably want to know, but I hope I answered your question. And again, if anybody has any questions about what they're reading, don't hesitate to send me an email. That's my job. Take care.